Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you this happy new day, day 115 of the Free to Hope presents the 12 spiritual principles being applied to COVID-19. Yes, we are in the solution and no longer in the problem when we embrace the 12 steps that are spiritual and nature, and we're going to apply them to the simple suggestions offered by the CDC of wearing a mask, washing your hands, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated. So, this morning recovery conversation is about setting people free, like you and like me, so that we can give hope to others, help others prosper equally during this COVID-19 pandemic. Free stands for from recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. Did you hear that? Let me say it again. Be set free from recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally as we simultaneously go through this knee-bowing experience, because there is a solution. And they are contained in the 12 steps that were adopted and created by Alcoholics Anonymous back in the 1930s. So they have been successful for over 80 years in helping alcoholics stay sober and helping others to achieve sobriety. So I don't represent Alcoholics Anonymous, but I've been a proud and humble member for over 31 years as of February the 23rd of 2021, but one day at a time. So, as a result of my God waking me up this morning and waking you up this morning, breathing life into me this morning, breathing life into you this morning, He wants to use us. He wants to use shattered, broken, and wounded people like me and like you to rescue wounded, shattered, broken people like me and like you. And when I have been practicing these principles in all my affairs for 31 years, one day at a time, I didn't practice them during COVID-19 back in October, November, and December. No, I did not. So God allowed me and 7 of my family members to survive COVID-19, and we are in day 115 of restoration. Therefore, He is using me to share with you the experience, strength, and hope of my journey in the 12-step program, but also sharing with you my experience, my strength, my lack of wisdom, my bad decisions, my bad choices, and how I contributed to contracting COVID-19 and infecting members of my family. But because He spared our lives, it is my honor, my duty, my obligation, my responsibility to share with you in order for you to save your life, the lives of your family, and the lives of your fellow human beings. So before we do any of that, let's give our Creator the acknowledgement and the homage that He deserves, because He knows the beginning, the middle, and the end of this pandemic, because it's not the first, nor will it be the last that we as a human race will experience. But because this pandemic, He has provided us a solution contained in the 12 steps that are spiritual in nature, so that we can deal with any physical conditions using a spiritual angle, even COVID-19. So let's give Him 30 seconds in a moment of silence, while we also include the entire human race who is going through this knee-bowing experience called coronavirus, COVID-19, and its variants, its effect, its impact, its outcome, and fatalities. we are somewhere in that category, somewhere, to the point where either we're being proactive, reactive, inactive, or responsible. We're either in the prevention, intervention, or restoration mode of COVID-19. So let's include our entire human race also with a moment of silence for just 30 seconds. Join me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of our Creator and my higher power, who I choose to call God, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for at least hearing me, but the goal is for you to listen. And obviously, if you've been listening since April the 1st of 2020, you got a lot of information regarding the 12 spiritual principles as a result of me reading an article by Dr. Scott T. Allison on March the 31st in the Psychology Today, where he wrote an article called How We Can Benefit from the Wisdom of the 12-Step Programs during the month of April of 2020. Now we are embarking on April 2021. And look at the devastation that has occurred as of COVID-19. We are nearing the reported numbers of close to 600,000 deaths in the United States alone. Reported. So had we utilized the wisdom of the 12-step programs as outlined by Dr. Allison with 7 principles, we could have experienced a lower number in the fatalities of COVID-19. But since we didn't, guess what? It is on the rise and it will continue to rise. Why? Because of people like me who was defiant, rebellious, stubborn, self-centered, egotistical, prideful, had an attitude of indifference and being invincible, even having the 12 steps program in my life. It goes to show you how deep our character defects are of not wanting to be told what to do, not wanting to be forced to do something that will save our lives. But there is hope. They are in the 12 steps. Today is a new day, a happy day, and we can begin today to learn and apply and practice these 12 spiritual principles to the CDC's simple suggestions of wearing a mask, washing our hands, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated, okay? So go back to as far as April the 1st of 2020 to get caught up to where we are on March the 30th of 2021. Now, if you want to go back to December the 3rd, which is day 1 of me presenting to you what COVID-19 looked like on me. Did you see the opening page? I don't know which one I had, but let me show you, just in case you're from Missouri, what COVID-19 looked like on me. So here I am. Sickly. Yes, I sat before you just like that picture. The dentures are out, no makeup on, didn't have the ability to smell or taste, couldn't hardly breathe. My whole body felt like a gigantic toothache. And as I progressed in my recovery, only by the grace of God, you see the improvement. Why? Because I started practicing on a daily basis the simple suggestions offered by the CDCs, right? And so what you see now is day 115. So if you want to see what the COVID-19 process, quarantine, isolation look like, go to my podcast starting December. What I've been doing is sharing with you bits and pieces of my early podcast and you can see the improvements, the upgrades, right? The professionalism as a result of my sponsors. So before I talk about Dr. Allison's article and Jason Waller's breaking down of the 12 steps, I want to acknowledge my sponsors. Now that we paid homage to our creator and paid homage to everyone who is dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. So here are my sponsors. And I will encourage you to become a sponsor because the information is free to everyone. And we want to be able to share and increase this platform to as many available spots across the world, okay? And somebody told me the other day, and I've been saying it, Edwina, why don't you become syndicated? And guess what? If it's God's will, I'm ready. So if you have a contact with a higher power who you choose of your own understanding, please plant the seed and tell them that we are doing a good job in getting the word out, even if it means just touching one individual. So my sponsors are Free to Hope, right? And that stands for From Recovery, Emerge, Empower. And also we have Patchwork Human Services, and that's with Ebony Madry, right? We have Levante and Dorsey and Associates, Academy of Peace, my dear friend, Dr. J. Macklin, as we in the community mourn the passing or the transition of Dr. Mary Douglas Bailey. Yes, she was in recovery for over 30 years. She went back to school and got her doctorate degree. She has been very instrumental in getting the word out and helping people of the LGBTQ community, but she has left her legacy. Why? Because we are mentioning her today and her great work. So our hats goes off to Dr. Mary Douglas Bailey, and Dr. J. Macklin and I were very close friends of hers, and we acknowledge the loss, but God has gained another angel. Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant is where I had my 31st anniversary. The food is excellent. The business practices, the CDC suggestions, and I recommend Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant in Wilmington, Delaware. Every morning for the last 30 plus years, I've been going to the 1212 Corporation, Inc., a recovery safe haven for those who are recovering from alcoholism, drug addiction, and individuals as well as families to come and be there with peers, and 12-step meetings are on each and every floor. So if you want to find me every morning, go to the 1212 Corporation here in Wilmington, Delaware, and you will find me at my Alcoholics Anonymous home group of the Sunrise Group Open Meeting. All right. My other sponsors include Women Do Haul Transportation Services. Mr. C's Barbershop is responsible for my crown. Morgan's of Delaware, I'm wearing one of her outfits and jewelry selections. My Afrocentric is from Lady T at Morgan's of Delaware. Then we have jewelry by Catherine Butler. I also wear items from Jones Accessory of Philadelphia. And this morning I listened again to the Morning Wake Up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland from 4:30 to 4:45, Monday through Friday. And last but not least, Divine Light Recovery Center, which parallels with Dr. Carl Jung, Dr. Bob, and Bill W. when they recognize that people with the disease of alcoholism need divine providence, divine intervention, and directed towards the divine light. So please patronize my sponsors. And if you would like to become a sponsor, please look at the information that's on the screen and plant that seed of becoming syndicated. My goal is to let God use this vessel to share the way to freedom from recovery, emerge empowered for the purpose of giving hope to others, help others prosper equally while we simultaneously go through this pandemic. But the solutions are in the steps that are spiritual in nature. All right. So now I want to recognize my sponsors, no, my resources. Okay. And they are, I mentioned Dr. Scott T. Allison, right? And he wrote an article in Psychology Today, and it says how we can benefit from the wisdom of 12-step programs that can help us during the month of April of 2020. Guess what? The COVID-19 has increased, and they say it's going to get worse before it gets better because of the additional variants that are among us. And so he uses 7 points from the Al-Anon Anonymous Fellowship and talking about how we can apply that wisdom to COVID-19. And then I extracted Jason Waller's breakdown of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, where he presents other resources, right? And his experience, strength, and hope and wisdom, and put forth a narrative, an overview, a synopsis, a summary of each of the steps to encourage you and inspire you to see the benefits and the spiritual possibilities of doing all of these steps. So, like many of you, y'all know I like repetition. It is important. What are the 12 spiritual principles, right? Spiritual in nature, I said, okay? So here we have one. We admitted we were powerless over COVID-19 and that our lives had become unmanageable. So when Dr. Scott T. Allison said we can benefit from the wisdom of the 12-step programs, plural, all we have to do is change the area of focus where alcohol, drugs, sex, gamblers, lust anonymous, and replace it with COVID-19. Our lives had become unmanageable because we are powerless over COVID-19. But there are solutions, and they are in these steps. 2, came to believe that a power or powers greater than us can restore us to soundness of mind. It says sanity, and don't think it means that you're crazy. It's that we are making some insane decisions by not wearing a mask, not washing our hands, not social distancing, not contact tracing, not getting tested, and not getting vaccinated. So came to believe recovery principle number 2 will help you be restored to soundness of mind in order to follow these simple CDC's suggestions, okay? So the next step we have is recovery principle number 3. And it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. If the CDC suggestions have saved your life or helping you along with any other information, if you're from Missouri, just look at the amount of data and research that's available so that they can show you that this pandemic, this COVID-19 is real. And so whatever is helping you to stay alive by doing the simple suggestions, these 12 spiritual principles can make that happen even the more. Why? Because it comes from a spiritual angle to deal with any physical conditions. 4, made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. This is the first tangible written exercise that we do in a 12-step program that we're going to apply to COVID-19 that will identify why we are so defiant, why we are being rebellious, why we have that feeling of being invincible, why we are stubborn, self-centered, all those character defects that prevent us from doing the simple suggestions of the CDC. There's nothing wrong with you, but we need to find out what happened to us, so that we can achieve that spiritual experience, that will create a spiritual awakening, that will allow us to have a spiritual transformation, increase our spiritual maturity to obtain that psychic change. Yes. So recovery principle number 4 is when we put the metal to the rubber. All right. So let's continue with recovery principle number 5. Right. We have here admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Once we find out that being stubborn and being self-centered and being egotistical, the exact nature of all and majority of the character defects lie in fear in one shape, form, or fashion. So fear is the root of most of our character defects. However, in recovery, we use the acronym for fear is to face everything and recover. Face everything and rejuvenate. Face everything and be restored. Face everything and rebuild. Face everything and rebound, right? Once we get to the exact nature. Then when we get to the exact nature, we present ourselves like an onion, like a garbage can, like having diarrhea. We want to go and get that stuff out, but we have to present ourselves to the power that can relieve the frustration, that can relieve all those negative attitudes, ideas, and behaviors. And all step 6 says, are you ready to have all your defects removed that prevents you from exercising and doing the simple suggestions offered by the CDC? All right. So once we become entirely ready, then now we are in the present state where now I know that I'm defiant. Now I know that I can be rebellious. Now that I know I can be egotistical. Well, step 7 say, if you just humbly ask the God of your understanding to remove that shortcoming, and he knows you are for real, he will. So if you want to pick on the mask and you change your mind, no, humbly ask him to remind you why you putting on that mask, right? If you are trying to go to a party or something, right? And your ego say, let's go. No, humbly ask him to remove that shortcoming of being on image time, right? And not go to that social gathering in order to save your life and the lives of others. Pray for that shortcoming to be removed now, and it will happen. Right now, recovery principle number 8, as a result of me contracting COVID-19 and infecting members of my family and all others who have lost loved ones to COVID-19 or have infected others with COVID-19, we need to make a list of any and everyone that we have caused harm to in any way, shape, form, or fashion regarding COVID-19. All right. Now, the step that we are presently on, and we're doing an overview of part 2 today, is recovery principle number 9. So let's get that one on the screen so that you can see. It says, may direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, even me, even you. So what type of amends should I be making? Direct, indirect, change up behavior, evaluate our motives, Timing is important. Be on solid spiritual ground, right? So when I made direct amends to my family members, when I made direct amends to myself by practicing the CDC suggestion, being an attraction and a role model to them, my family members, and to you, I am making amends in one shape, form, or fashion. Okay. We go to recovery principle number 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it, right? So many of us hate to say, I'm sorry. Well, if you go through steps 1 through 9, you can decrease the amount of times you need to say, I'm sorry. If you take that continuous inventory on a daily basis and promptly admit when you were wrong. So that helps us to stay on spiritual ground, meaning that we can correct what is wrong today and not taking it into tomorrow or even at night to bed. All right. That's recovery principle number 10. Recovery principle number 11. Once we have the foundation set up in recovery principles 1 through 10, we will see how the spiritual transformation, the spiritual awakening, our increase in spiritual maturity, and the psychic change we are experiencing is a result of and the continuation of recovery principle number 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry it out. So if a simple prayer can say, help me to be obedient to the CDC suggestions, I can save my life and I can save the lives of others. If I just listen to other people's experience who have lost loved ones to COVID-19, who are experiencing the devastating severity of COVID-19, right? You will understand what is needed, okay? So we make that spiritual connection so that we can use that spiritual angle in any and all physical conditions, all right? And last but not least is recovery principle number 12, right? Here it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others regarding COVID-19. That's why I am sitting in front of you today. To encourage you, to motivate you, to inspire you, to help you embrace these 12 spiritual principles and apply them to the simple suggestions offered by the CDC of wearing a mask, washing your hands, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated, right? Because with this spiritual awakening and being restored to sanity, right, we are now making sound decisions. We know why we're putting on the mask. We know why we're washing our hands. We know why we're contact tracing. We know why we're social distancing. We know why we're getting tested, and we know why we need to get vaccinated. All right, so the whole idea of these 12 spiritual principles is to just enlighten you, educate you with information. If you're from Missouri, no problem. I had to do my own research, ask the right questions so that I can be convinced with my higher power's help to become open-minded, to become honest, and to become willing to do the next right thing. And the next right thing for me was getting tested. So I got tested by members of my family, and you'll see the transformation back starting in December the 3rd, but go back to April the 1st of 2020. You'll see the whole presentation, recovery conversation on applying these 12 spiritual principles to any and all physical conditions, including COVID-19. Because there is a solution. We can, we will, we must stop the perpetuation of this devastating pandemic and its variants, their impact, their outcomes, right? Their effects and their fatalities. So if you want to be a part of the solution and no longer part of the problem, humble yourself. Humble yourself. And do the next right thing, okay? So now, before I share a little bit of my video from day 7, I want to show you, just in case you're from Missouri, I got my first vaccination shot on March the 6th. You ever see excited about a needle? Yes. Here we go. Dr. Joan Pope. All right. All right. Got that in, right? And I, like you, had to get answers. I had to dispel the myths. I had to go on the facts. I had to see what happened in our past, right? I needed to find out what the vaccination will do, what it won't do, right? So we had to do our own research, ask the right questions so we can make a sound decision. And I did, because I know now that getting the vaccination only so far decreases the severity of the symptoms. Should I contract COVID-19 again, it will decrease the possibility of me being hospitalized. And guess what? Ultimately, decrease the possibility of me dying. So isn't that needle worth it? Listen, in my addiction, I got needles for everything. STDs, TDSs, or whatever. So why can't I take the vaccination that's designed to help stop the severity of the symptoms? Won't be hospitalized and possibly won't die. It's worth it to me. So here's my second and final shot thus far on March 4th. Now listen to what she said.
Let's get you a little shot of hope here, my
Yes,
dear.
dear. Yes, dear. Yes, yes, yes,
There
yes,
you
yes.
go. Perfect.
Did you hear that? Give you a shot of hope. Be set free from recovery, emerge empowered, right? To give hope to others, help others prosper equally. Yes. So I'm a believer and I hope you become one too. All right. So let me show you a little bit of my seventh day, which is April the 7th of 2020. When I talked about recoveries 1 through 4, I embarked on 5 a little bit. And again, repetition is just so important. That's what we do because we never know when the student is ready so the teacher can appear. All right. So just in case you was hearing the last time, this time we want you to listen. So enjoy a few minutes of my earlier podcast and you can see the transformation in a lot of ways, shape, forms, and fashion. Enjoy, but listen. Out of my home by utilizing the 12 recovery principles. Okay? So I'm going to get all this stuff out the way. It's significant, you know, but it's stuff. It's things that I was able to accomplish utilizing the 12 recovery principles of Alcoholics Anonymous that this 12 recovery principles are modeled after. Okay? So let's get started. So just to give you an overview once again, just enlisting what the 12 recovery principles are so that I can spend more time on the recovery principles of today. We're going to talk a little bit more about recovery principle number 5, and we're going to talk about recovery principle number 6 in more detail, okay? But just to list what the 12 recovery principles are, okay? Recovery principle number 1. Now, let me do what I did yesterday. Put this over here. Billy is okay. He's not going to fall. So I can put this down. Yes. All right. Then I bring my coffee back over. I told y'all it's about being responsive and not reactive. So, you can see that wig. It doesn't matter. So, Billy is here. Okay. So, recovery principle number 1. We admitted we were powerless over, and I left the blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. And the 3 questions that I ask you to think about and to answer, okay, in your journal. Did you get the journal? Did you get a pad? Are you writing this stuff down? You need to. Mm-hmm. Even in the midst of all this, it's going to help you. So even if you said, we admitted we were powerless over this coronavirus pandemic, and my life had become unmanageable as a result of what's going on, loss of job, loss of income, staying at home, the kids don't go to school, oh my God, woo, I'm powerless over all of that. And as a result, if I don't learn how to put this stuff in perspective, my life can become very, very unmanageable. So, these were the questions that I posed and wanted you to answer. What are you powerless over? How and in what ways have your life become unmanageable as a result of your powerlessness? And 3, do you think you can ever regain power again? I use the example of me being an alcoholic and drug addict. I admitted I was powerless over that stuff. And truly my life had become unmanageable. And in recovery, I've been prepared to accept my powerlessness over this coronavirus pandemic because I refuse to let my life become unmanageable as a result of that. I admit my powerlessness. I use that serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I can't change what's going on. I admit I was powerless. But I can give hope in the midst of the storm. As a result of that. I admit my powerlessness. So, Recovery principle number 1, we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. Recovery principle number 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, soundness of mind. Mm-hmm. Is there a power greater than you? You better believe it. This coronavirus pandemic is a power greater than you, isn't it? Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. And your life can definitely become unmanageable as a result of it, right? But what can restore us, to you, me, to sanity, soundness of mind in the midst of what's going on today? A power greater than us. So recovery principle number 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than us could restore us to sanity, soundness of mind. And the questions that I posed for recovery principle number 2 are, can you name some examples of a power greater than you? 2, can you describe the characteristics of that power? 3, what characteristics would you want that power to possess and demonstrate? 4, can you provide examples of how that power could restore you to soundness of mind? Sanity. Yes. So my power greater than me in terms of alcoholism and drug addiction, right? Was the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, other 12-step programs. People in recovery, they were a power greater than me. The rehabs, the facilities, the staff, they were a power greater than me. They all provided information to help me be restored to sanity, soundness of mind. And ultimately, I allowed that process to truly identify the greater power than me, the God of my understanding, who's caring and loving. Yes. Recovery principle number 3, it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, in my case, the Creator, if you like, as we understood Him. Made a decision. We make decisions all day long, y'all remember? You made a decision to tune into me today, right? You may make a decision to share this with somebody else. We make decisions all day long, right? And so I need to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the power that's greater than me to help restore me to sanity, to help me make the right decision, to help me calm down, because I can't do it by myself. You can't do it by yourself. So we need a power greater than us. Are you willing to make that decision to turn your will and your life over to that power greater than you? I am, and have been for the last 30 years. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's why I'm able to wake up every morning in the midst of what's going on in the world, being grateful, saying, thank you, Lord, for just waking me up. Yes. I'm going to make a decision today to turn my will and my life over to you. Whatever comes down the pike today, Lord, let it be nothing that you and I can't handle. So I have joy, I have peace, I have tranquility in the midst of all of this. I can still be the best person that I can be. Because I made that decision to turn my life and my will over to the God as I understand Him. And the questions that were posed, how many decisions do you make during the day? 2, can you provide examples of who and how you make a decision to turn your will and your life over to? 3, can you define, explain the words over to the care of? Why our will and our lives? Why? To the care of? Made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of that power greater than you? Yes. Okay. And number 4, how important is making that decision to you? And how often should you practice making that decision and why? Those were some of the questions, right? And the reason why I said that is because we make decisions all day long, right? And the question that I told y'all I ask myself and that we ask ourselves is what I'm thinking, is the decision that I want to make or going to do, is it going to feed the flesh or is it going to feed the spirit? But if I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of that power greater than me, most often I'll make the right decision. Do the next right thing. Because self-will is like, ooh, self-centeredness, it ain't went nowhere. It's still there. But practicing these 12 recovery principles helped me to do that, okay? Recovery principle number 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We talked about that yesterday in more detail, right? Talked about listing our character defects and also our character assets. If you will, assets and liabilities. Character. So what defects of character do I have? And what character building assets do I have? Well, I recognize my character defects by utilizing the 12 recovery principles and making this searching and fearless moral inventory. I also listed some assets, but guess what? I needed to focus more on the defects of character. And I talked about having resentments. I talked about the jealousy. I talked about the defects of being deceiving and lying to the IRS. Yes. The defects of lying, manipulating, and all that kind of stuff, conniving. Yes. And the reason why I made that searching and fearless moral inventory, because to thy own self be true. I want to know how I became what I became up until I got into recovery. Yes. Recovery principle number 5 says we admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact natures of our wrong. Number 5 says we admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So those character defects that I talked about yesterday, there's an exact nature of each of those character defects. And having to admit it to God, who already knows, admit it to ourselves, I know. And to another human being. So you select somebody that you trust, that you have confidence in, that knows about the 12 recovery principles, and together you can help get to the exact nature. That jealousy is really camouflaged by fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being abused. Yes. Okay, so that's recovery principle number 5. Recovery principle number 6 says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Those things that we listed in recovery principle number 4 that caused our character to be defected. And what are character defects? They are natural instincts that we were born with that far exceeded their purpose. That's all. We were given God instincts for survival, for security, for reproduction. But they became defective when it far exceeded their purpose. So that's all character defects are. I just need to have my share. I just need to have my portion. I don't need to be greedy, taking yours, competing against. No. And I need to respect your portion, your part. So why wouldn't I want those character defects identified so I can become a better person? And learn how to increase my character building assets of being more giving, more loving, more caring, empathetic, sympathetic, show compassion. Yes. Okay. So number 6 says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So the 12 recovery principles, through these steps that we are talking about, they can happen. Recovery principle number 7 says humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. So as we practice this thing called recovery, and we practice these recovery principles, we are going to fall short because we're not perfect. The goal is to make progress. Remember I told you, I don't want to go back to underneath that parked car. So as I continue to practice these 12 recovery principles in all areas of my life, there are times I'm going to fall short on a defect. But there's a solution. Recovery principle number 7. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And I gave the example of being at the grocery store in line with a person who has 1,000 items in front of you and you have 1 or 2 items. And you in the back of her getting a resentment and getting agitated. When all you have to do is ask him, God, give me patience. And he will. So humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So as we do this thing called recovery, yes, we are going to stumble, but we're stumbling forward. Not backwards. We're stumbling forward. Okay? Recovery principle number 8 says, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So in recovery principle number 4, we identified the person, the situation, the feelings it created, and the part that we played in it. So those persons, those institutions, those organizations are what we're going to be putting on our recovery principle number 8. So that when we get to recovery principle number 9, that says make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, then we. All right. So with that being said, we are going to stop there because we are on recovery principle number 9. Now, again, you may say to yourself, man, she keep talking about the same thing over and over and over again, right? I wonder why. I'm glad you asked. Because there are certain things that we as human beings need to be reminded of. We need to be challenged. We need to measure our growth. We need to increase our understanding, our comprehension, right? So what you heard last year, you may hear the same thing this year, but it made more sense this year. You may have read something, you may have heard me read something last year, but you really didn't hear because now this year you listened and you picked up what I was saying last year. Okay? That's why these 12 spiritual principles have been so beneficial and so rewarding because of repetition. They say that in God's world, well, in man's world, there is nothing new under the sun. It's only new to you and me. And then when it's new, most things outgrow its intended desire or purpose. So that means you need to be challenged with something else, something more. So that's why, listen, don't form an opinion. Don't be so judgmental or so critical. If you don't change the channel. It's just that simple. But for me, who've been going to these spiritual meetings for 31 years, one day at a time, I get something out of it every day. I remain teachable every day. I want to be of service every day. Why? Because we only have today. It's what you're going to do today. It's what you're going to do today. What choices, what decisions are you going to do today that will be a part of the solution to this COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, yesterday is gone, but let's review yesterday. Tomorrow's not here yet. Well, let's prepare for tomorrow and take advantage of this day. And it can be a happy new day. You can change your life today. You heard something that didn't register last year, but it's registering right now. So that's why we repeat things in different formats, but sharing the same story. All right. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to go over what Jason Waller wrote down in terms of a narrative and the outline, synopsis, summary of recovery principle number 9. That's why I stopped that video from April the 7th of 2020 on recovery principle number 9, so that you can hear it again tomorrow or hear the continuation of it tomorrow. But I'm preparing you now with what was presented in a different format. Let me share this with you real quick. When I got into recovery, and they make suggestions, they don't tell you what to do, they make suggestions. And so the therapist said, we suggest that you make 90 meetings in 90 days. I was like, oh my, that's a lot of meetings. She said, no, I know, honey, that's a lot of meetings. She said, okay, Edwina, do me a favor. Can you make a meeting a day for 3 months? Oh, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. All righty then. Saying the same thing in a different way so that the student can become ready and the teachers will appear. All right, so let's go to this overview. So we started yesterday with Jason Waller's outline of recovery principle number 9. And so he started breaking down recovery principle number 9, where he outlined 3 types of amends that we could make. They were direct amends, indirect amends, and living amends. So you need to go back to my podcast of yesterday or extract Jason Waller breakdown of the 12 steps by going to jasonwaller.com to get the information, right? Then he went on to say that there are 3 kinds. There are the 3 auras of the 9th step that are associated with making amends, right? One is restoration, resolution, and restitution. And this is where we stopped yesterday, right? So what do he mean by restoration type of an amends, right? So restoration means bringing something back to its former state, usually things that have been damaged. This can mean restoring our reputations and even restoring trust in a relationship. So restoration of a type of amends means bringing something back to its former state, usually things that have been damaged. For example, this can mean restoring our reputations and even restoring trust in a relationship. Resolution, what kind of amends is that? Resolutions as recovering addicts. Now, we're going to apply them to COVID-19, but right now we're sticking with alcoholism by Jason Waller's description. Resolution in terms as an amends as recovering addicts means we likely have past experiences that plagued us or disturbed us in some way. Finding a resolution to these problems means coming up with answers and solutions and laying them to rest. Resolving things. Resolution type of amends. Means we likely have past experience that plague us or disturb us in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Finding a resolution to these problems means coming up with answers and solutions and laying them to rest. Being set free from recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. And the last aura is restitution type of an amends. Okay, so restitution as it relates to 9th step is the act of returning something material or abstract to its rightful owner. Restitution. A lot of us knows what that means, right? Yes. Restitution type of amends says it's the act of returning something material or abstract to its rightful owner. All right. So he says, Jason Waller, our sponsors can help us explore each of these concepts so that we gain perspective on the nature of our specific amends and stay focused on what we are supposed to be doing. The key is that we keep the focus on ourselves and our side of the street, so to speak. Even though we may be eager to rip the Band-Aid off and get an amend over and done with, it's important that we are not impulsive or careless as we attempt to make amends. Some thought and planning needs to go into it for the best possible outcome. On the flip side of the same AA coin, it is equally important that we don't procrastinate making amends. Why? Because based on experience, many recovering individuals have relapsed when they allowed their fears to keep them from doing step 9. Dr. Bob, one of our original founders, could not stay sober until he went around town and made amends to all those he had hurt. He goes on to say, as with all of our previous step work, it's important to be realistic. Completing your 9th step cannot be neatly contained within a particular time frame. We didn't finish our 8th step list and then immediately start crossing off completed. No, right? We then immediately start crossing off completed amends like we would for items on a shopping list. That's done, right? In fact, some of our amends may never be done and our efforts may continue throughout our recovery. The truth is that every day that we make an effort to refrain from hurting our families, friends, co-workers, and even strangers, and try to practice loving behavior with them is a day we have continued our amends. Did you hear that? Even such seemingly concrete amends as paying a past due debt aren't necessarily done once and for all when the debt is paid off. Continue to pay off debts. Refraining from lying, stealing, or cheating will be an ongoing 9th step practice in our lives. So I hope you listened to what Jason Wallace said as he described restoration, resolution, and restitution, all forms of types of amends that can be made indirectly, right? Or directly, right? Or living amends. That's why we need to extract this information so that we can study it in the comfort of our homes, and why these 12 spiritual principles can work when we apply them to COVID-19, when we apply them to doing the CDC suggestions. Yes, we will obtain a spiritual awakening. We will be restored to soundness of mind. Yes, we will. That's why these 12 spiritual principles are essential in combating and stopping the perpetuation of this devastating pandemic. So get the stepping, please. All right, we're going to stop there, and tomorrow we will go over the continuation in the section entitled when to do so would cause harm. All right, so if it's God's will that we are rejoined tomorrow for day 116, listen, if he breathes bright life into me and breathe life into you, wake you up and wake me up, we are going to be here, all right? So in the meantime, be safe, do the next right thing of washing your hands, wearing the mask, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated, all right? So I want to quickly thank my sponsors again, because without them, I would not be sitting here before you. And I just want to make sure that you know where the help is and getting the resources and support that you need. Let's do that again. I don't want that one. I want this one over here. Okay. So they are Free to Hope, Patchwork Human Services, Levante and Dorsey, Academy of Peace, Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant, the 1212 Corporation, right? We also have Women Do Haul Transportation Services. We also have Mr. C's Barbershop, Morgans of Delaware, and Lady T at Morgans of Delaware. We have Jewelry by Catherine Butler, Jones Accessory of Philadelphia. We had the Morning Wake Up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland and Divine Light Recovery Center. So if you want to help us become syndicated, listen, plant the seed, nurture it, water it, cultivate it, right? So that we can spread this free information in order to save one life. Save one life. There was a woman by the name of Helen Jones Lamar Hall Taylor, my mother, who prayed for me. She had me on her mind. I'm so glad my mother prayed for me. So I want to close with acknowledging my mother. Yes, her birthday was in the March the 23rd, but guess what? I'm going to let you see what God has done through her prayers.